We're joined down here, as you can see, in the Mansion House with the current Dublin Lord Mayor, Christy Burke, who is very much one of our own from the North Inner City. So, Lord Mayor, welcome to Dublin City FM. Welcome to Council Matters.
Thanks very much indeed, and it's a pleasure and an honour to be here.
Yeah. Without trying to be too much plumos, I watched several moments of your term so far have really stood out to me, and the first one was the night of your installation, because I mean I've known you through politics for quite some time, but what I saw then was a man. You were humble in that sense of the word. It was almost like not so much that this is something that you've always craved for, but there was the recognition there. And the second bit I liked as well is that your colleague, Councillor Larry O'Toole, another man we know. How did you feel on that night? What's your memories? I think they're going to probably stick with you forever.
Well, it was 30 years on
yeah.
from the time I was a city councillor. The memory that night was...
Were you overwhelmed?
I was overwhelmed by it. The fact that I was honoured by and chosen to be the first citizen of the city. Mm-hmm. The penny didn't drop for about 20 minutes because I was so used to going into the chamber, taking my seat, getting on with the business of the day and trying to do the good things for the North Inner City. Mm-hmm. But that night it dawned on me then, I'm the first citizen, I'm representing the citizens of Dublin. Mm-hmm. And that really came home, began to get emotional internally. Mm-hmm. I tried to hide it.
Yeah.
My humility certainly allowed me to do that, to express it. Mm-hmm. I was delighted with all of my workers and family and all of that in the audience, because they had been working hard, my political activists, with me for many years, and we never believed that Christy Burke would get to the office of Lord Mayor. So then I immediately addressed the issues. I mean, you can come in and have 100 issues, which is ridiculous. You're here for a year, it's ceremonial function, everybody wants a piece of you, but you also have to keep your eye on the priorities. And my priorities were housing, homelessness, and people with disabilities who are trying to get bathroom extensions, ramps, handrails, which can take 2 to 3 years. Yeah. So they were my 3 priorities, and then we came to the Mansion House, and the election of mayor sort of wore off because I was in the Mansion House, I was with a lot of members of the city council, friends, family, etc., etc. And then when I left here and I walked outside and the doors was getting open and the driver was there with the car, and I'm saying, oh yeah, and he drives me home.
Yeah.
And I found all that strange, and I wouldn't be into the plumbers of opening doors and number of you. And I was getting out of the car and the driver was there. I said, "I fine, I'll open the door." Yeah. And they just do their duty and they're great blokes. But then the penny dropped when I discovered there was 345 text messages and messages on my phone. Yeah. And then the cards, as you can see in the mantelpiece over there, congratulations, and the same at home. And then when you would read in the paper that day, Lord Mayor of Dublin, Christy Burke, then it sunk in.
Yeah. What struck me, and this is again because we're of the same vintage in that regard, I remember when I was about 10, we were out doing some collection out in the south side, up in Dubliners or somewhere like that. There was a mayoral election at the time, and whoever was the local guy got elected, and there were hoopla, out in the car, the streets, bringing around. It was their boy was elected. Now, I hadn't seen that for 40 years. When I saw that on that night, when the people came up from the North Inner City, this was their acknowledgement as well, and I found that really interesting because we've had 3 Lord Mayors in the next constituency: Breen, Anisha O'Weary, and Evelyn Byrne. Nobody came out from Clontarf for them. It was, to me, this was back. It was almost very refreshing. It was, it was back to the future in that sense. Did you feel that?
Yeah, without doubt. It was a down-to-earth audience. Mm-hmm. It was the inner city helping homeless volunteers because they believed their man is now elected.
Yeah.
And my own political activists who've been with me for 30 years, they believe now it's his turn.
Yeah.
And as I said that night, the house belongs to the people.
Of course it was.
Within reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an office here and you have to work in privacy sometimes, but I meet everyone that comes, I respond to every email and I return every call.
Yeah.
And people often go into shock at 7 in the mornings when I ring and say, "Hey, it's Christy Burke." "Lord Mayor?" Yeah, well, I'm sorry it's so early, but it's the only chance I get to make me calls.
Yeah.
I believe in acknowledging, because if you acknowledge a person, whether you can do it or not, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the acknowledgement, it's the dignity and the integrity. So I don't see myself as isolated away from the citizens. I'm the first citizens. There's a million and odd other more.
Sure, yeah. That was something else that again struck me. I mean, another shall we say, example of the man and the office. Now, this is only very recently, in the last couple of weeks, I put up a video of yourself at Pat's Cathedral, and the response has been astonishing. And the reason why I put it up was that I said, this is the man understanding the office. This is not Christy Burke arguing with a bunch of guys out there. This is the man standing up for the office. Now, because I know you and I know your background, I thought that wasn't necessarily an easy decision to make, but you took a courageous decision, and I called it a Lord Mayor for all the people.
That was nice. No cards today. Yeah. What do you want me to do?
I'll leave his Christy.
Thanks very much. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
I'm afraid you didn't go in.
I'm the Lord Mayor of Dublin on duties.
I know.
And the dead is the dead.
The dead is the dead.
As far as I'm concerned, honestly, the dead is the dead.
But then you commemorate those who killed.
I commemorate all men and women who died in wars. Every one of them.
Well, you commemorate those who killed as well.
I commemorate all men and women. The Good Friday Agreement proved that. Right, I tell you something. I'm more of a Republican than probably any of us.
No, that's
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't say that.
Now, do you want to put a bet on it?
Yeah,
Do you want to put a bet on it? Martin McGuinness met the Queen.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't mind him either.
Well, you know, irrespective. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to walk away and set the country back 20 years? Now listen, you're dealing with someone who's been in jail, an IRA volunteer, on the run and involved in the struggle from start to finish. So don't go there with me.
Christy, we respect you. I don't want you to walk away.
Thanks very much. Well, look, you can give it to the car. I don't be dragging stuff.
Who shall I give it to?
It's as simple as that, lads.
It's as simple as that.
It is. So what's your alternative?
My alternative is to ignore these people.
And what would you do by ignoring? Tell me what you do by ignoring.
Get on oil instead. That's what you do.
Tell me what you do by ostracising people. Let me tell you something. For 800 years. For 800 years, by ignoring people, people lost lives.
And since when did you come around with this? You're getting older or something?
No. Well, we all are.
Yeah.
Are you getting younger?
No, I'm getting older.
Well, are you getting wiser? Get wise. The wisdom to know the difference. You want to have a history debate, pal? I'll see you after this. No, it's not a tick you're talking to. It's not a tick. So don't go there.
You're getting all defensive. I didn't call you a tick.
Defensive for what? Not defensive for what?
You're getting defensive there.
If I want to get defensive,
I didn't call you a tick.
I
didn't call you a tick.
So don't go there with me.
That's why we talk.
I just asked you not to go in.
5 Republican families in jail today.
Yes.
More than what you have.
Okay, thanks for talking to us.
No problem.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I don't want to leave on any sour notes. You want to shake hands? Shake hands.
Only because you're an old comrade, that's all. But I'm ashamed you're going there.
The work you're doing. Okay.
You're trying to be a part of you.
Thanks.
Michael.
Hello, Mayor. Very well indeed.
How important is that to you?
It was very important. I mean, the Lord Mayor is impartial and the Lord Mayor is neutral. Any duties or engagements I get, I'm doing on behalf of the city. It would be wrong of me to cherry pick from my office in relation to the engagements. I don't want this, I want that. If I'm selected by 62 elected members for this city, that's the job I have to do. On that particular day, it's great to see people protesting, provided it's peaceful and not violent. That's a democratic process. I got out of the car, and as you know, I'm a Republican, and I spent 42 years in the Republican movement. I was volunteering the IRA, I was in jail, I was on the run, I was at the campaign of the armed struggle from start to finish, and there was many more on us who sacrificed more than I did. But I met the group. They were an anti-war group, so they said to me, "You shouldn't go in there. They're people that kill." So I did say I didn't think there was a war going on in Patrick's Cathedral. I then asked the individual, "What do you expect me to do?" "Don't go in." I said, "If you do that, We will knock this city back, this country back 20 years. And I'm not prepared to do that as the first citizen. Now I said, if you're speaking about or hinting about Republican credentials, I'll give you mine. And I gave mine.
Indeed, yes.
And the person said something like, not as good as mine. I discovered later he was a member of nothing. He was a member of absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, I believe he was a member of a picket breaker. So this time he was on the wrong side of the picket.
No, I mean, we both know who are in the group. I won't say one thing or another about them, but I thought, to me, for somebody who was so clearly identified with the Republican movement, to be paying tribute to perhaps what might have been adversaries, I thought that was remarkably, a great evolution of what we would call the image of the person. Can I then take you back just slightly as to the North Inner City? You come from, in many respects, what divides us, you come from one side of the Tolka Bridge, I come from the other side, the Luke Kelly Bridge. We've always said you could take the boy out of the North Inner City. Can you take the North Inner City out of the boy?
No, I mean, nothing changed me. Despite the fact that people say, oh, you live in the mansion house. I don't. I live in a former city council house. All my family, a lot of them are from Ballybock. There was no airs and graces here. That door is open. I represent the city, and I also have an obligation to the North Inner City. And I try and do my constituency work as best I can. As a matter of fact, I do my clinic tonight in the North Strand, and every one of them constituents who call to me will be acknowledged by phone or letter or email tomorrow. But I see it as an opportunity to open doors with me as the first citizen in relation to bureaucracy and officialdom. And as you know, for a long time I've been campaigning for a statue of Luke Kelly. That's going to happen. Good. That's going to happen before the end of my term.
Any thoughts of where it might be located?
I understand it'll be in the dock area. I understand.
Okay.
That's not definitive, but I understand. The North Inner City is there. I mean, I walk about in the North Inner City on a Saturday and I go out canvassing, and people come up to me and they ask me to do things where if there was other Lord Mayors, I can remember people saying to me, oh, I don't want to approach him, he's the Lord Mayor. That's not with me. There's no barrier with me, there's no wall, there's nothing to divide us. My humility doesn't allow that. My thoughts of the dignity and the integrity of an individual or a group or residents or whatever must be addressed, and you can't breach that.
Something that, again, we possibly both experienced it in similar ways. Growing up on the North Inner City, when I eventually went to UCD, I was with a lot of people who went to private schools and all of that. And what I discovered was they weren't necessarily any smarter than we were, but they had a very different conditioning, a very different sense of expectation. When you were walking down Dawson Street as a kid, what was your expectation? Is that you'd perhaps like to be in there as opposed to maybe a previous Lord Mayor who expected to be in there?
I was a great lover of walking up and down Grafton Street around Christmas and down Dawson Street, but I'd always look over at the house and say, I wonder is the Lord Mayor busy? In the back of my head, it would be, I'd like to have a go at it. But there was never any burning issue as a priority. Whether I got here or not, if I did, it was meant for me. If I didn't, it wasn't meant. As my mother would say, my late mother would say, it was meant, it won't pass. Sure. And that's one of the regrets my mother and father wasn't alive.
The man, Christy Burke, as opposed to the Lord Mayor, Christy Burke, how much of it would you say is, how much would you be a product of your parents, and how much of you would it be a product of the environment?
Well, I'd be very much a product of my parents and try and express what they taught me and try and live up to their principles of being honest, try to be hard-working, no malice in your thoughts, have the constant thought of others, never look down on anybody unless you're going to lift them up. All of that humble humility that comes from working class areas. And I'm not saying it doesn't come from other areas, I'm sure it does. But that's what we would have been taught. I came out of a tenement house, there was 6 or 7 of us in one room. Then we went to Hardwick Street Flats. So we appreciated anything that we were taught or told. And my views and activity with the Republican movement would have been from my mother, who marched me up to Nafina a slua in Eccles Street at 7 years of age.
Okay.
So Padraig Pearse was always my man rather than the Lord Mayor's residence.
It's interesting you should say that because my family on the mother's side again were quite Republican because I mean we were related to the Beans. Growing up in the 50s, Republicanism was, we had the border campaign, then it faded in that sense of the word. My lot were probably more constitutionalist. Did your family always feel that there was unfinished business after the treaty?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, my mother's philosophy was Brits out and you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Take your Union Jack, wrap it up around you and go home.
Yeah.
Now, they never expressed one way or another that they favoured violence. I'm sure privately in my mother's heart she didn't.
Yeah.
My father would have been an observer. But would have been gentle to those involved in the cause. He'd have given them a dinner, he'd have given them a bed, he'd have put them up, would have made no comment. But my mother, she would quote Pearse and say, Ireland unfree will never be at peace. Ireland with a British presence or establishment will never be at peace.
Sure.
And how right she was.
I always remember 1966 as exclusive rather than inclusive in that sense of the word. And I've got serious reservations about going down that path at all. And what I mean by that is that, rightly or wrongly, there's a lot of people here who were involved in the First World War, who had family in the First World War, certainly in the North. And we almost whitewashed that out the previous time. How would you like to see it being remembered this time round? It's the centenary is far more important than the 50th anniversary.
The centenary belongs to the people. There's no doubt about that, and I expressed that at the City Council meeting last night.
Yeah.
It must be people-led. It belongs to the citizens of Ireland. The proclamation behind it states it quite clear. It states all children treated equally. It states, education and homes for everyone, aspirations. If you allow the government to run the show, people could militate against. I mean, militate in their mind and say, I'm not bothering going to that. If you have community groups doing a community garden in honour of the men and women and children of 1916, that's a plus because they're now engaged. They're now wanting to know about 1916. Remember, it was hidden in our history in school for years.
Absolutely, yes.
Now it's sort of romantic. And everyone wants to slice it, and rightly so. Yeah. So I see it as being community-led. I mean, I have an initiative now that I'm doing what's called the Green Mile, along with Senator Mark Daly. And the Green Mile will go from Mirror Street, the Rotunda, the Garden of Remembrance, the GPO, the College of Surgeons, and the Mansion House. And that will be a Green Mile painted along the street and the roads, not damaging any granite stone or anything like that. And visitors and citizens will be able to get a map, and off the Green Mile they will be able to see the significant buildings that were part of the rising, Boland's Mill, Mount Street Bridge, etc., etc., etc. They're simple things, they're practical things. And when you do that, you are a success. But one thing about the 2016 commemorative is that if we want to honour the men, women and children, we will have homelessness eradicated by 2016. It's a must, because a lot of our leaders fought for the right of decent living conditions. They fought for the right to work. They fought for the right to recognition. They fought for the right to vote. And they fought for the right to democracy. And they are the principles that I try adhere to.
When we talk about communities now, communities are quite different in 2016 as they were in 1966. One of the big complaints about 66 was that the Somme was ignored. Now, we're paying a great deal more attention to the First World War, and I think rightly so now. But there are other groups that were perhaps airbrushed out at the time, like the gay community, who are now saying, well, we were part of 1966, maybe not as highlighted, the Jewish community, a couple of others as well like that. Do you think it's important that we make it that inclusive in that?
I believe you make the new Irish community inclusive, and you make them, because don't forget, they too are coming out of countries where there was persecution and conflict, and they have their own history. And that was mentioned in the City Council last night, that it needs to be inclusive. Everybody's invited. Everybody should be involved. Everybody has a role. And let's make 2016 a memorable, commemorative, of the men, women and children, but let it be that we eradicate things that can be eradicated.
Last year, when I was talking to your predecessor, I was saying to him, perhaps thinking of his background rather than yours, I said, can the man in the big house actually understand what the man in the doorway is feeling? Now, I wouldn't even ask you that, because I think you can empathise a lot more so. What we're discovering with homelessness is that it's not just the guy. That's dreadful. That's the visible side of it. But homelessness is a great deal more. It's something you've made a priority. Why have you made that a priority? Is it something that's ingrained, as we say, in terms of our growing up, of the insecurity of tenure, if you know?
Well, I mean, it's in me because I'm 32 years in politics. Mm-hmm. And it's in me that every man, woman and child has the right, like education, to a roof. Okay. Every man and woman that we meet on the streets of Dublin who are homeless didn't decide to wake up some morning and decide to go homeless. Yeah. They're homeless for all different reasons. Yeah. There's abuse, there's people coming out of prison, there's people who fell on hard times, there's people who came from broken marriages, there's people who can't afford private accommodation, there's people who are on the housing list and they can't go anywhere else, nobody else will have them, their families and that are overcrowded. They're all the reasons. So when I see a man and a woman lying on the street, there's one thing I always say, that could be me. Yeah. And that's what's ingrained in me. Yeah. And I would like to think that if that happened to me, that some man or woman would have the same type of mentality of seeing that my dignity and integrity is preserved and held.
Because of the way the environment
Well, I think my view on it was growing up in the inner city, like where you're 12, 14 and 16 members of a family and maybe in a one bedroom or in a tenement or in dreadful conditions in the hallways where there was no lights, outdoor toilets. I mean, I lived that life. Yeah. And, you know, I always said when I got elected, my mum and dad lived in Hardwick Street flats. I always said, I'm going to put Hardwick Street on the political map. Yeah. And I did, because at the time I was elected, there was only one power point in each flat. Yeah. It sounded simple. Yeah. You couldn't plug in a heater, you couldn't plug in a radio. So I got extra power points. I got the roofs fixed. I got the committee recognised by Dublin City Council. I got a commission flat. Yeah. We start to get funding. We start to have promotions. We start to have community meetings. Yeah. We tried to put an end to the drug dealing in it. So, you know, that was my desire. Yeah. And my clinics would come from all walks of life. The rich, the poor, the good, the bad, the ugly. Yeah. And everyone has to get the same recognition as any man or woman that's coming through the door. Yeah.
Do you think in the good old days or the bad old days, whatever you would like to call it, that perhaps homelessness, or at least housing, it was often how would I put it without pretty much there was a corrupt element to it, in the sense, because my uncle, who was telling me he worked on Charlie Hoy's first campaign, he said, Charlie, you know, any chance of ever getting me a council house? Charlie being the great man, he said, I'll look into it. And the uncle had decided he would emigrate anyway, and about 3 days before he was gone, he heard from Charlie, said, I got you that place. Now, he got it because he worked on Charlie's campaign, not because he had 5 kids, and that to me was endemic. I think that's gone now. But did that whole attitude or that whole approach exacerbate what wasn't a great situation? Anyway?
It may have happened in those times. Yeah. That's why I say the proclamation states to treat every man, woman, and child equally. If a person's on the housing list, they're on a number and they're on a bond. They've a right to that, and no politician has the right to go in and gazump somebody because of who they are or because they worked on a political campaign. That's not the case today. If Mr. A or Mrs. B is on the list today and they're number 300 on the list, there's 299 ahead of them. Now, people may say it's not a fair system. It's the only system I know that may work. Those days I'm sure they were there, because remember, a lot of the civil servants, public servants, would have been connected to Fianna Fáil. And therefore Charlie had the clout.
It wasn't just Fianna Fáil,
it wasn't just Fianna Fáil. I mean, it was probably across the divide. But I know this much: any house or any place that I made representation for on behalf of my constituents, I had to fight bloody hard to try and get them a flat, never mind a house.
So when you heard last week, as we all did, Regina Doherty saying that the North Inner City gets too much by and large compared to other people, what did you think of that?
Come into the real world, Regina. Contact my office and I'll take you on a 3-day tour and I will show you, and then maybe you can make judgment. But until then, I don't think you should make judgment.
Education for people like myself was hugely important in terms of social mobility. One of the things I think people are now finding disturbing is that there's now less social mobility than there was basically in my day. How do you feel about that, that the young Christy Burkes out there now are going to find it much more difficult than perhaps you did to achieve the office of Lord Mayor?
Yeah, look, the young people out there, young men and women who are immigrating, whatever amount numbers per week, and that's a very sad reflection. But I would say this: politics needs young men and women. Mm-hmm. Politics needs honesty, dignity and integrity. And any man or woman who aspires to be in politics and aspires to be Lord Mayor for the benefit of the citizens, there's a difference.
Indeed.
There's a great difference. If you have that desire, and if you honestly tell yourself, if I become a Lord Mayor or if I'm elected, it will be purely for the people, of the people, for the people.
It would be almost impossible to pass by the first 6 months without mentioning the immortal name of Garth Brooks. I felt you inherited a hot potato there. What did you think of all of that schmozzle when it landed on your desk?
Well, it came like an express train down the track, and it hit me in this office, and everything went on hold as far as Lord Mayor being the first citizen. And a lot of time and effort from all walks of life and parties put effort and commitment into trying to resolve the issue. And I'm talking about late nights, early mornings, and indeed in this office, and tic-tacking with Garth Brooks, manager, and indeed with the promoters and the GAA, in fairness, and residents groups. I felt sorry for the ordinary man and woman and kid who bought tickets. I felt sorry for people who put a lot of money into stock in the hope that the concert would take place. I also felt, let's be honest about it, for the hotels and the B&Bs, the chippers, the pubs, the walk-in stores, the centre. Everyone lost. The economy lost millions. At the end of the day, right up to the 11th hour, I, along with the city manager and others, tried to get Garth Brooks to come and play. It was his call. He didn't do it. I'm sure he may regret it now, and it was regrettable. But look, we moved on. It's passed over my head. As you're right, as you say, try and avoid mentioning the war.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. I bet you felt it was easier probably to negotiate with paramilitaries than the sharks in the entertainment business.
The Good Friday Agreement was like dealing with Mary Poppins. The Garth Brooks was like dealing with Saddam Hussein.
Yeah. Look, we're coming up to Christmas, Lord Mayor. You've got a lot of support as well, which is not just in the North Inner City, but certainly throughout the entire metropolitan area. So if you would like to wish the best to some of them.
Yeah, I certainly, as Lord Mayor and first citizen, wish everybody a very happy Christmas and a very peaceful New Year. And could I say, please, in your homes, turn off the Christmas lights at night. Pull out the plugs at the tellies. Lock all doors. Let's have a nice, contented, peaceful Christmas without any fatalities or tragedies. I'll work Christmas Day by visiting children's hospitals, by visiting the A&E, and then out to the RDS to feed the homeless. But look, I'm privileged to do that. And I'll come back and have me dinner around 7 o'clock. As far as I'm concerned, Christmas is a great time for kids. To me, it's another 24 hours. And if you can sleep 8 and then do what you can do in between, then it'll be a good Christmas.
Lord Mayor, your campaign slogan was one of our own. I think we can definitely say, for those of us who grew up in that part of the world, you're certainly one of our own. And we're proud to have you upholding the office with such great aplomb. So, Lord Mayor Christy Burke, happy Christmas and a pleasure to talk to you.
And Alex,